Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talking Points with KPI, episode number 62. Today, we're going to be going over a blog-style podcast, so we haven't done one of these in a while. So for those of you who haven't heard of what this is, Erik writes lovely blogs on kpimh.com, so please go click the blog tab and read them. And we kind of just take a deep dive into what he wrote and kind of just have a discussion with multiple people instead of just one entity writing about it. So today's topic of discussion is recruiting myths. I believe we've touched on this in previous podcasts before, different myths, but today we're just going to dive into the deep hole. So we'll just get right into it. Number one that Erik has written down is most players commit early now. And you can go into how the myth is starting to stigmatize bad recruiting myths or how kids are just recruiting too young.
I think just in general, before we get into myth number one, this is a passion thing for me personally, and I know Dan's gotten into it a little bit too, and it's just, the recruiting process brings up so much anxiety in players and families, and what's happened is there's entities that are now feasting on that, and really kind of, using that nervousness and that anxiety to push a false narrative and really profit off that, which is, pretty dirty. So, as far as myth number one, most players committing early, it's just not, it's not reality. We see the Power 5 commits early on social media, and you get the graphics and the lightning bolts come out of the Instagram post, and and Drake's singing or whatever, and that's the 1% of the 2% that commit that early, and so it's something that we have to really talk down families and athletes a lot. Be like, hey, the vast majority of guys still commit in that time frame of junior, summer through the senior year. Yes. That's when most college baseball players figure out where they're going to go play. And then the other side of that too is we've had a whole bunch of guys in here commit early, a ton. Okay. Over half of them are not going to go to the school they committed early to. So there's all this decommit going on now. And, we can get into the whole game of early commits, but the reality is most guys don't commit early. And the guys that do commit early usually end up decommitting. So it's why commit early? Unless it's a dream school, unless it's why would you ever say no to the school situation? But even then, we've had some of those that have decommitted, So it's just, it's not a perfect equation. And most guys don't actually follow through with that commitment.
I think the part that this is an area that I don't usually touch on because this is more Erik's side of the business. And I think the main premise is, okay, are we doing what's best for the athlete? And the secondary to that is we're dealing with early commit. We're talking 14, 15, 16 years old.
Making a major life decision.
that has tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of implications. So, I just feel I think that the commonality that we've seen across the board is there's pressure from parents to the players, there's pressure from teams to the player, and then there's internal pressure that athletes dealing with themselves. And I think the role that we've played with this is vetting it out very thoroughly. Again, Erik does all the vetting. He does it's a very thorough process that the athletes go through. And then figuring out, okay, if this is the decision you want to make, then it's on you. Just know that the decommitment and losing your spot or your scholarship, all those things are on the table, because the earlier you commit, the more time that time window is larger for things to change. And I think the early commit thing usually either is, I think commonly you said, the dream school, or I just want attention. I want to have my social media posts and feel special for the day and have the 250 likes or 1,000 likes, whatever it is on social media. And so I definitely think this is a myth that should be addressed, because there are people out there, people and entities, that are going to take advantage of that temptation and give you what you want, but ultimately not be in line with what your long-term goals are.
No, for sure. And to get onto the social media point, right? I mean, back then I remember it didn't. Nowadays, you have to have this entire entity that's good. Your social media has to be good. You have to play baseball well. You have to do well in school. Back then, if you played well, that was really how you got in. Nowadays, they have this pressure of, okay, I have to make sure my school's in order, my baseball's in order, which those two should always be in check. You're a student athlete first. But now you have this social media entity where it's if I don't show myself in a light to where coaches can see me now, because we can get into the portal and all that stuff, how that's made everything different. But I want to tag along on the early side of things. How do you think, and again, coming from more of a player perspective, Do you think it's from a coaching perspective, is I'm going to give this kid a commitment early so I can see how he handles the pressure, or I like what I see now so I'm going to give it so I can capture it?
It's contextual, but from a college coach's point of view, most of it's beating someone else to the punch. Like, even though they know a lot of these commitments don't follow through, either the kid decommits, or what more commonly happens is the school drops them after 2 years if they're not good enough. But they just want to be the one that grabs that kid, and they get the verbal commitment before anyone else does. Even though that's not binding, it's still stronger than not having the kid committed, So that's their logic for it. And knowing these things and knowing the decommitments and knowing the drops that happen, my recommendations to almost every kid now and family is to wait unless that degree can change your life. Like if this commitment leads to a college degree that degree has so much value, and there's less than 5 schools that I would say fall in that criteria, to wait.
No, absolutely. So we'll move on to myth number 2. So this one's tied in with the coaching, and we've talked about this a lot. But myth number 2 is my coach is the one that will get me recruited. And just open-ended, how do we think that is received from coaches and players, really? How have you seen that kind of play out?
Yeah, it kind of goes to that ego-filled coach that we try to kind of go against. Coach, a well-connected coach that knows how to navigate this process and is going to be really honest is certainly really valuable. But that isn't the reason you will get recruited. That will help you in the recruiting process. The reason you'll get recruited is because you're good enough and you've advocated for yourself. Like I've done the work in the weight room. I have the skill. I have the stats to back it up. I've done the outreach. I've followed through with all these things. That's what gets you recruited. The Landon Stumps and the Gabe Gackle, where you watch them once and every school in the country offers. Again, that's the outlier. That's not what we're talking about here. Most kids have to send the video and attend the right events and have a really methodical and systematic way to approach the recruiting process.
I'm trying to be an advocate on our softball side with our staff to help address this, because this is 100% the belief on the softball side. Each organization has a network that they send players to over and over and over again. So if I want to go to that school, then I have to play for that organization. So what you see is the players wait till their junior year, and then they switch to that org. The family basically, most times the families, I can't afford to play for that team, so I'm going to hold that money and hope my kid gets good enough. Once they do, then I go to that org, they get placed, and that's the mentality. And so I think more times than not, this myth is more to advocate responsibility. I want to give responsibility to somebody else, because if I don't achieve it, if I don't get if I don't get to the next level, well, then it was the coach's fault. Coach isn't reaching out for me. They're not helping me. They're not doing all. It's
and we're saying on the basis of success.
I'm just saying it's just an easy cop.
Gotcha.
Because you don't want to take acceptance, like you're saying, I'm not good enough. Yeah. I didn't produce on the field. I didn't do the things I needed to do in the weight room. Yeah. I didn't take care of my grades. It's much easier to blame somebody else and think that, okay, they're in control, because that's easier. And it's the same reason on the flip side, more on the positive. I'm going to give my money and my control to this person because I think it's the right thing to do, when in reality, you're putting your child at the mercy of whoever is that person that you're giving that to.
Yeah.
I'll tap in. So, huge decision, right, as an athlete, of making this big investment, right? Playing college baseball is a huge investment if you want to do it. And so a little bit on both sides, as far as the coach goes, is it's not what you know, it's who you know also. So when you know a good network and the kid's good enough, it's usually good things happen, all right? But how do you get good enough? It's obviously trained here at KPI, but it's putting in the work. You don't have to go to all these showcases and all these hoorahs. It's if you're good enough, you'll get seen, or you'll be asked to get seen somewhere by invite-only stuff. So it just goes back to having a support system, your high school coach, your travel ball coach, where you develop. It's all working together, your family, your parents. And ultimately, it's what the athlete wants. The guys who are committing early, if it's his dream school from day one and you have the opportunity, take it. If it's not your dream school and, some other school gives you a scholarship, I would suggest not to take it. It's not your dream school. You still have time. So it's a huge investment, and one that obviously we get to see on a daily basis with all these athletes rolling in. So we have a lot of perspective, and we see a lot of different scenarios and situations. But at the end of the day, it's just being good enough. Whether a coach gets you recruited, a network, just be good enough, and ultimately it comes down to the kid's decision on where he or she wants to go.
I think the funny one is I go to this, and we'll hopefully have some of this as far as we review our data. It's like your child, one of the first things that most people don't think about, especially again on it's more apparent on the softball side. Like if you want to go to some of these power schools, like if you're not 5'10" and probably 170, 80 pounds, like and I've used this again, but go the school you want to go to, look at the people on that roster. Do you look anything like them? And you're like, no. Okay, well then you're not even going to get the coach's attention because you don't suffice the most important piece on the baseball side of things. I think it's the same thing. Like your child being good enough, the metrics are all there. Like you can present that to your child. Like I don't care what your on-field performance is, if you don't suffice some of these necessary prerequisites. And I always go to size. Like if you're a high school baseball player and you don't weigh 170 pounds minimum, you probably don't have a shot playing at a very high level just because everyone is going to be more powerful and bigger than you. So I think with instead of trying to give the control and give the ownership to the coach and allow them to and feed into their ego of like, oh, you're going to get me placed. It's no, like go to your child and say, okay, have you done your necessary work? Have you checked these boxes so that when we do go to that coach that has the good network, then it's an easy conversation. It's not the grind of having to like hustle and get people's attention and spam their emails and tag them on every Twitter post and make sure that you're showing your hitting drills in your garage because I'm looking, coach, I'm getting better. It's like all of that comes from a lot of those entities that are trying to take advantage of the fear of like, oh, I'm not going to get seen, I'm not going to get attention, so that I just need to spam everybody. I need to tag them, and hopefully they see me on their Twitter feed. And it's like, again, that falls to another 1%er. Like if you're not good enough, then you're not going to get them to pay attention in the first place.
No, absolutely. And before we move on, I want to kind of touch on the coaches side of thing. We talked about it a lot in a previous podcast, but what would be your guys' advice to a coach? Because obviously it feels really good to have a good player. It feels good to know that you have influenced that player in some way, but realistically you've done nothing but just kind of guide rail them. They've done all the work. How do we get the coaches away from claiming people and making sure that like, hey, like you are, yes, they're at your wherever they're at, but you didn't.
You have to be there for them to claim them.
Exactly.
If they had a conversation with them, they'll claim them. So
yeah, I mean, how do we kind of get that egotistical side? And obviously, you can say don't treat them like trophies and that stuff, but kind of trying to get a little deeper than that. How do we kind of suffice this issue?
You don't.
Yeah, it's so brutal. Like the whole situation's like brutal to me. It's like you invite a kid to come play with you for one tournament for free because you know he's a dude, and then then he commits 6 months later and you're putting him on your social media. Like it's comical.
I think that we had there were players when this all first started that were committing to play at the next level, and we refused to post it.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I don't want to be that coach. I don't want to take ownership. I don't want to take away from them. And then we had parents say like, hey, like this is a way to celebrate their accomplishments. We trust what you're putting out there, and we know that it is in the right intentions. Where like again, like I think we post kids that commit and that train in our facility, but we can show you data. We can show you how often
we won't post some kid that's been here for 2 weeks. So.
No.
Like we will only post if they've legitimately developed here.
Yeah, 100%. And development, like Kurt, you can see this on the hitting side. It can happen in one session, where you can unlock something, or you can get them to buy into something and see progress. And all of a sudden, you've got a huge leaps and bounds of progress. It doesn't always happen that way, but it can. But I think we've struggled with this for a long time because of that mentality of like taking ownership. And I think it happens a lot more on the travel ball side of things, for sure. On both the baseball and the softball side. Again, I do think that it's funny because you see some of these players and you're like, that kid is massive. She is a freaking brick house. Like she was gonna play Division I softball,
regardless.
No matter who she played for. Like you really didn't have anything to do with that. Like you just got lucky.
Yeah. So. Okay, so moving on to myth 3. This one I kind of touched with personally, playing in Division II, but the need to play Division I. The status quo that comes with Division I, yes, obviously every athlete that has strived to play Division I knows of that status, but kind of bring light to how many people actually don't get that opportunity and still make it to their dreams.
I mean, I'll just take away the notion of Division I and anything we're talking about. I'm just going to talk about a situation in general. You have an entire population. Only 2% of that population moves on to this certain level, the top level. And then if you're part of that 2% and you get to this top level, 70% of the time you're going to fail and not play at that top level for the entire duration. That's a lose-lose proposition. Mathematically, that's stupid to try to go for that. Okay? That's the Division I level. Only 2% make it there. And there was an organization put out this study a few years back of Division I freshman baseball players that get to that school. 70% will not play all 4 years at that school. Like, it's crazy, and all kinds of reasons why: grades, academics, you get cut, injury. Like, there's a lot of reasons why. Okay, so we're not necessarily talking about that, but the point is that it's a mathematical losing proposition. So, we have a ton of Division I guys that train here, so I'm not poo-pooing the level. I'm not, of course, like, it's a great stepping stone to pro ball, and if you do play, but it's extraordinarily challenging to get to that level and stay at that level. It is, you have to basically be an outlier to get to that level and play all 4 years there. So it just, it's a really, really tough go. I was at a Division I school, hated it. I transferred to a Division II school, had the absolute time of my life. I wouldn't have traded those 2 years for anything when I transferred. So, there's a whole bunch of ways to have a great experience and get what you want out of college baseball. It doesn't have to be the Division I level.
Absolutely. And to that point, I played Division II, had an amazing 4 years at Academy Oregon University, loved every single bit of it. And again, I don't think, like, it comes to that same point, I don't think you can, but how do we break the stigma of an athlete in young high school seeing his friends, because I was in that same boat, friends are committing to D1 colleges, you think you're at that same level or better than them, you may not think you're getting the opportunities, you have an injury here or there. How do we kind of say playing time is better than the status you get? How do we kind of make that known in the baseball world?
I played NAI, so it's like it really just comes down to what do you want? What do you truly want? If you just want to put, I'm going to a D1 so you can get all the clout and all the social media, so you can say that. The status of it, that's why we had all those academic scandals where people were paying a bunch of money to get their kids into schools they had no business getting into. It's all about status. So if that's what you want, just know that it's an empty proposition. It's not going to fulfill the need that you actually want to fulfill. I think the D1 or die, like, I go on both sides of this. I think setting your sights on an audacious goal, I think there's a ton of value in that. Like, there are going to be audacious goals that kids and people are going to set, no matter it's sports or life. And you have to be fine with doing that. You just have to know, okay, as things progress, as time goes on, it's going to become more and more clear of where you need to be. And then you mitigate risk. Okay, I'm gonna have a multitude of options. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna talk to that school. I'm not gonna pay attention to that coach because that's not D1. That's JUCO. I went to JUCO for 2 years. I'm never gonna play at JUCO. That blow. It's like you need to figure out what's in your best interest in the long term. And for you as an individual, the parents thing, I think has a bigger influence on this. Sure. And one thing I always tell every kid, like, in 4 years, if you go to a D1 and you don't have athletic scholarship because you're not very good, and you go there and you play and you walk out with tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and you have to live with that debt, not your parents. And school debt is real, it's a big issue, right? Yeah. So you have to think about things in more layers versus just getting to the Instagram posts. And I think the D1 or die, I go on both sides of it. I think it's good to set high goals and go after them. But then I also think that at some point, you have to accept, okay, here's where I'm at. I got to make a much more educated decision on what's the best for me.
Yeah, obviously a lot of layers in this D1 or bust, that go into it. I would suggest it's all about being in the right spot for your athlete. Okay, so it comes down to the coaching staff. Okay, so you have to know that there's high potential that you are going to move up within that Division I school, all right, as a freshman. And knowing that there's trust and respect and they believe in you as an athlete. Because many a times we get to a D1 and, you could be a guy, and then all of a sudden, you and the coaching staff it's just not working or eye to eye, and then you're pigeonholed in a way, and so the best thing is to look at everything. It's a business, and so you have to make the best possible choice, and invest on the coaching staff as well. At the end of the day, they're the ones making the decision. So if it's D1 that you make it to, great. If it's D2, D3, any IJC, you have to go at the best place that suits you as an athlete. Obviously, if you're good enough, you're going to get your shot. But it's more than just playing baseball. It's a business. It's relationships, just like anything. So you do not have to go to D1 to play at the highest level, which is Major League. You don't. This clout and, this stuff that kids are chasing, it all comes out. It plays out, you get to D1 and you're not there to play some ball, it's going to get dropped. Being a guy that went D1, then D2, it's all good baseball, Baseball players are going to – the best 9 will always play on every team. And let me tell you, no matter what level you're at, they're pretty damn good. So obviously the biggest thing here is develop, be good enough, and I hope all athletes can always try and achieve their highest dream, because that's what it's about. Whether you enter the college platform or just go from high school to pro, it's all about what's going to help you and your loved ones out at the end of the day.
So Paul Goldschmidt won the National League MVP last year.
Yep.
What college did he go to?
Nobody cares.
You know why you guys know that? No one cares. It only matters where you get to. So just, to have a great experience, find a great place to get a degree, build some lifelong relationships. No one actually cares in the long run. So.
At the GC one too. My wife and I went to the same exact school. She went there for 4 years. I went there for 2. I have no debts, and I paid nothing for that college experience. Yeah. And her family, she paid for 4 years of that. So you poo-poo the JC route. It's well, I have the same exact degree as her.
The same knowledge.
And the same exact knowledge, and I still got 2...
And the same experience, really.
2.5 years of that experience, but I paid half the price. I think the JC route, I think is so funny. Everyone, I'm not going to go. I'm too good for the JC.
We could have a whole podcast on why JC is the best route for the vast majority of kids.
Oh my gosh, yeah, 100%. Just from a financial standpoint.
Combine these two now, 4 and 5.
Yeah. So
it's the same rant.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into the next myth. This is probably, we asked a kid earlier before the podcast, what do you think his biggest recruiting myth would be, and he's in high school, and he pointed out these 2 pretty obviously. So the first one is scouting services can help me get recruited, and it kind of ties into, and then the showcases are the best way to get recruited off of these scouting services. So we'll just kind of go in, and then we'll just kind of go off the topic. So just go for it.
Well, I like turning into the Incredible Hulk when you say these 2 words.
Yeah.
So, the first thing about showcases is, one, the word has just become so watered down and blah. And here's a perfect example. The last few months, December, January, February, we're seeing showcases happen every weekend. Colleges aren't allowed to recruit right now. Just wrap your head around that. These organizations are running showcases where some Joe Schmo writes a little profile about this guy that showed up to this showcase, and then they post it on Twitter. And then everyone thinks that that's a showcase, but there's no colleges there because they're not allowed to go recruit right now. It's nonsense, it's almost criminal,
And making them pay for it too.
Yeah, it's just you're gonna go spend $400 or $500 to go to this fraudulent showcase. That's how much it costs to train a whole month here. You want to get some bang for your buck, go train in January and December, not go to fake showcases. So that's my first rant on that. And then the other thing is when you're good enough, you don't need to go to a showcase. I think we have 48 Division I commits that train here. I think we counted that up. I think that's, the vast majority of them, the guys that were under my wings, they didn't go to one showcase. And how did they get to the Division I level? Well, they're good enough. They worked hard and they got good enough. So, that's my rant on showcases. You guys can go on that. Then I'll make a rant on scouting services after that. So
the showcase thing is this part that's so funny. It's not funny. It frustrates me. Is a showcase. It's almost like you're just taking your kid, getting numbers, and then see you later.
Yeah, that's it. You don't know where any of that goes.
They have, and showcases have progressed, right? Okay, we went from hitting ball, and they still do this, hitting a ball from a tee for exit velos, hand timing, speed testing, because it's too expensive to get. Well, now the basically it was like an arms race. Everybody's got track. Everybody's got this. Everybody's got that. Well, they're still just getting numbers. So an athlete deserves more. Like if you have an athlete that I saw the showcase the other day, it was like 2028 or something like that, throwing 60 miles an hour in their throwing velo. It's like that athlete deserves more to be told, okay, hey, this isn't very good, and here's a plan to get better.
Yeah.
Like that's the part I think is missing. And I know there's been internal talks across the board, and I'm sure there's people trying to figure this out. But it's just easy money, right? Like, you get your social media posts, you get your face on Instagram and Twitter, and your top 5 eggs and velos for the whatever, and you get your little write up, and it's like, again, criminal is definitely the term, but the problem is that the families and the parents are still going. The parent, like that's
they're desperate, they're anxious.
Yeah, that's the real problem. The solution here is educating parents on, hey, like this is something that you, number one, can not do at all, and on top of that, like there's also free ways to do this. I think we're going into the scouting services. Like, you're gonna get spammed by everybody, and like you're gonna be paying. We're gonna give you this one-time offer to sign up for this scouting service, and if you don't accept it right now, then you're gonna be paying 4 times that.
We had the largest scouting service, in the country. Emailing our 8th grade parents of kids that aren't very good, asking them to get on a call with them. Like, it's so dirty. Like, and guess what? It's the bane of college coaches' existence. Like, they spam their emails and they hit them up about plans. Like, college coaches aren't going to go onto some random scouting services website and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to give that guy a scholarship. Like, that's not how it works. They recruit with their network. They trust the people they know, not some profile. And it's really that simple.
The write-ups are horrible.
Yeah.
It's all a money grab.
Yeah.
It's a money grab, and it's just like showcases like travel ball organizations that aren't in it for the right reasons. That's what they're similar to. And all I could say is, as a parent and as athletes, is we got to be better. You have to research, review, look into these things. And just be better and making the decisions. Going to showcases in the winter months is just outlandish. So be better on that end. And as far as recruiting services go, is you as your own is our recruiting service. And just to piggyback on like these college coaches, and getting emails and text messages of spam stuff is. They're gonna always recruit just like a business on needs. If they need you and you're good enough at your position, believe me, they're gonna reach out to you because it's a high need. If they don't need it and you're not good enough, they're not gonna want to see anything that you're sending them. So, like I said, it's a business. It's all business, and you hire, you get on what you need at that moment.
The other one that's not talked about a ton, it's very, very common on the softball side, is I played D1 softball. So I'll be your recruiting.
I'll get you wherever you want.
And I'll teach you how to write the emails, and I'll help you with your social media posts. It's like, so the only requisite is I played at that level.
Yeah.
Like the thing that got you to that level, especially with recruiting how it's evolved in the last 5 to 10 years, like that person has no qualifications to be able to help you do the stuff that you can just do on your own. Just Google, how do I write a Twitter post? Like it's like having on the softball side, it's like these individual guys, and I think that like sometimes the attention is good, but sometimes like I don't know what to do with my life, and I want to be in softball, so then I'm just gonna basically play off those fears of like, oh, my daughter's not gonna get seen, and I'll help you with all of these things. So I don't know what to write. It again goes all the way back to that I'm abdicating responsibility. I'm giving it up to somebody else, and if they don't get me recruited, it's their fault.
So, and I like that accountability thing, because that's like not, like I said, that wasn't a thing when I was playing or when we were playing. It was just like, if you can ball out, you can ball out and you'll get noticed. But how do we help athletes on the social media side kind of steer clear of these people that go, oh, I can help you with this, knowing that you can just learn to do it yourself, and in the long run, that's going to help you in your career?
Do your homework.
When someone says that, run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, trust yourself. Like,
I think
trust yourself.
If somebody DMs you with like, hey, I can help you with recruiting, say, who have you placed? Prove it. Because there are some entities that out there. There's one person I think off the top of my head that hasn't been placing players, and that's his business, and he can look.
No, there's legit ones, you know, but it's do your homework, and then after you do your homework, ask who you trust the most. Hey, is this a credible network? Is this credible? You know, you have to look into it.
Well, the only reason I ask that is because nowadays with NLI, things get serious very fast with kids that actually can get a lot of money for themselves off their likeness and likability. And I think, like to Dan's point, do your homework, and to Curtis's point, like make sure you are trusting these people and know how to do this stuff yourself. Because in the long run, if you know how to do this in your whole career, you're going to elevate every single step of your game, whether it's on social media or not.
I don't want to be that horse, so we can go to the next one. But I think that if you just think about, I'm willing to put X number of dollars into this system to get the outcome, which on the overwhelming majority of players, it's a collegiate degree, college degree. So if that college degree is worth X, and I'm putting an absorbent amount of money into that, then you have to completely recognize all I care about is status. People say my kid played college sports. Yeah. I don't care about the financials. I don't care about some of that stuff, because if I'm going to put 10x in to then get X, it makes no sense. And I see this on the softball side. The softball side is crazy. At the most, is they're going to get a college degree, because there isn't anything necessarily beyond that. And so you're spending, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a season to be able to get your kid to go to college. It doesn't calc out, my brain.
No, for sure. I'm gonna bunch these two together as well. So we have 6 and 7. So 7 goes off of 6. So college coaches can contact me whenever they want, and then 6 is if a college coach sends me a letter or an invitation to a recruiting camp, they are into me all the way. And being a recipient of these letters, and then also being uneducated as a young kid about when colleges can and cannot go to you. I have been a victim of the showcase where you don't know that the dead period is in. And then how do we get these? I mean, obviously it's an ego thing at the high school level. Look at me, I got a letter from Oregon State. I'm super cool. And then again, it obviously just goes back to the education piece, but how do we make sure that these kids and parents know, like, hey, don't flaunt this stuff yet?
It's education. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, it's cool. Yeah. It's cool to get something in the mail from a college, that's okay. But you just have to understand how the system works, right? Like, up until this point in time, a Division I, anything lower than that is less than what I'm about to say, but a Division I school has three paid coaches paid for by the school, the head coach, 2 paid assistants. Another one, a 4th got approved for next year, so that's a step in the right direction. But these coaching staffs have way more than 3 guys on their staff. Like they have 6, 7, 8 coaches on their staff. Those guys need to get paid. Okay, they get paid through camps. So when colleges send a letter about, so when a college shows up to a showcase, one of the things they get is the database from that showcase. They get the email addresses. Okay, that's part of the deal. Same thing if they go to a big tournament, they get the pamphlet and they get the flash drive with all the emails on there. That's valuable to them. They build their camp database from that stuff. Okay, and then they send out emails and they send out letters inviting them to camps, because that's how they make money to pay their coaches. So it's not necessarily a horrible thing that's happening here, like they're paying guys that are working really hard, But it's just know that doesn't mean you're getting recruited. You basically got a marketing blast from a college that's trying to pay their coaching staff. Okay, so and again, that's not a bad thing. I'm not poo-pooing that system. It's just you just got to know what it is. So.
And who knows? You show out at that camp, and then you do get it.
And colleges, the new rule is colleges can't have any outreach to you until September 1st of your junior year. Now there's ways around it where they would contact someone, someone like they tell a coach to have the kid call me, like that's the way around it. But for the most part, there can't be any communication outside of the camp communication until September 1st of your junior year.
Absolutely.
I think that's a pretty easy way as far as the first one. Because like if it's not personalized to you, and there's a way software systems can get around
they
that
just
now.
add your name.
Yeah, but like there are some telltale signs where it's like you just got spammed. And if you want to go to that school and you want to go to the camp, I think what a great strategy. Right? Know that you could just be instead of putting money into a showcase, you're putting money into a coach's pocket.
And who you're talking to is important too. Like the head coach and the recruiting coordinator, they usually aren't involved in camps very much. If you're talking to them, if there's back and forth with those 2 guys, okay, now you're getting recruited. But for the most part, if you're hearing from a Vol, if you're hearing from director of operations, if it looks like it's just they put the head coach's name on it, but it's just a form email, like that's all part of the deal of trying to get people to camps.
For sure. So moving on to myth number 8 is if I don't get recruited by the school I want, I'll just walk on there. More power to you if you do decide to do this, but just kind of talk about the difficulty and how actually hard this really is.
almost impossible.
Yeah.
It was almost impossible before the transfer portal. Now it's damn near impossible. Because what happens is if Division I state, Silicon Valley State, needs a right fielder, they just go grab it on the transfer portal. They grab some guy that wants to come out here and do his master's in California, and they fill their hole that way. They might not even have to give him a scholarship. They're not hanging out at their looking for a random walk-on that's just going to show up to a tryout and make their team. Like, the team's already overfilled. The COVID rosters are still a thing. These rosters are still too big. So most schools are going to recruit 45, 50 guys for those 35, 40 slots. And there's just not room. It's just it's pure math. Like, it's just not it's not a real thing showing up to a walk-on tryout and making the team. Like, it's almost impossible now. Yeah.
I'm stealing from you, Kurt, where you talked about like this is a big commitment. I think if you were to get married and you just showed up at the altar,
Didn't know who she was.
You had no clue who was showing up. Are you gonna marry that person? No. Like, that's not the serious. Like, you're making a 40-year commitment. What?
Yeah, she
passed the eye test.
It depends.
Well, exactly. If Giancarlo Stanton walks up to you, he wants to play for you as a walk-on, you're probably gonna say yes. But you're you're trying to walk on for a reason. Like, that's brutal, but it's the honesty that needs to be had. If you want to go to that school academically, and you just need to tell your buddy, say, I'm gonna walk on. That's the most common. I feel like this is. You want to save face and you're worried about some people that you're not going to play in college. Like, that's fine. That's probably the most common. I'm walking on is I'm just going to go there academically because it's a good school, and if I make the team, I make the team.
For sure. And so we touched on this next myth a little bit with Dan talking about junior college and just how the opportunities are there, the experience is there, half the cost. And is just to kind of touch on this myth before we move on to the next one. But is there really anything that we else want to mention about the kind of junior college route?
I think the two things is JUCO baseball and softball is real.
Yes,
there are very good athletes at the junior college level,
especially in California.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of reasons why kids and families choose the junior college route.
Oh, for sure.
I think that you have to get past the status piece, and you ultimately, again, like, nobody asked me. Again, I have the same degree. Nobody asked me how I got my 4-year degree. Yeah. They go, oh, you have your degree from here. It doesn't matter how you get there. It's the same thing with Goldschmidt. Oh, he's the MVP. It's like, it doesn't matter what led to him being the MVP. He's still the MVP. So.
And JC's on the rise.
No, for sure.
JC did, JC was always good. It did take a little bit of a hit, the last 15 years. But it is back on the rise like independent baseball is. With all this overflow from COVID, JC baseball is going to be damn good here for the next 5-10 years. Like a powerhouse once again. So
transfer portal is the best thing to happen during college baseball.
No, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple. I'm a huge fan of the JC level. I usually don't start that conversation until later in the process because you got to get a family and a player's head wrapped around it. And I can argue really eloquently why the JC route's the best route. But there's a couple things that I always go to. One, academically. Okay, in the state of California, the English 1A class or the statistics class or whatever the classes you take at that JC, it is the exact same English 1A class at Silicon Valley Junior College as it is at San Jose State, as it is at UC Berkeley, as it is at UCLA. It is the exact same credit on your transcript. There's no difference. There's no distinguishing it. It's one of the beauties of the California public school system is that, like, you can weave your way through that system and get the same credits. So academically, same thing. The UC Berkeley was voted the best public school in the entire world. Same English class at the JC, at the local JC, And then mathematically, going back to the math of the Division I level, like I said last time, the math of the JC level is strong in your favor. JC players transfer to Division I and Division II schools at a 5 to 6 times higher rate than high school players get into those schools. So it's pure math. It's a better route to get to that level if you're not being recruited by those schools out of high school.
No, sure. If we look at it, it's 2 years of free experience, essentially.
It's free now in California.
Yeah, you're just getting a free chance to kind of grow up a little bit and get ready. Genuinely just get ready for a D1 program, because when you get there as a freshman, I know me going straight into a 4-year out of college, only being D2, is still is kind of a culture shock. You don't expect that. And then going into the last myth, a baseball scholarship will pay for all of my college. I know this was a big one going through high school and just seeing a lot of kids get these 100% and not really knowing what that meant, and just hearing, and obviously parents talking about 100% saying he's going to have everything covered, not really knowing what that meant. But just kind of go into why that's kind of our last myth.
If it says a football or basketball scholarship, then it will.
Yeah.
But baseball's very limited on that, and I'll have Erik talk about those numbers. But yeah, it's very rare if you get 100%. Very.
Basic math again. All right. NCAA Division I level. Anything I'm talking about Division II, Division III are lower than these numbers. All right. 35-man roster. All right. The NCAA Division I school gets 11.7 scholarships to spread out among 35 guys. Simple math. Okay. Most guys are on partial scholarships. Smaller, less than half partial scholarships. So, like Dan said, the calc out of like, hey, I'm going to put this amount of money into showcases and scouting services, and this is what I'm going to get out of it, usually doesn't calc out. So if you're just doing it to get the kid to level, it's a whole different story, and obviously there's value there, but just it has to be understood the economics of the college baseball level. College baseball is not a fully funded sport. It's getting better, and there is chatter that there will be more scholarships in the next few years, which would be an incredible thing for college baseball. But the reality of the situation right now is that you're not getting a full ride. Now, the SEC schools are doing something different now with NIL money, okay? And they're the only ones that can pretty much do that because they have vast resources, but for the, and again, that's the 1% of the 1%, go to SEC schools. The reality of the situation is, one, do really good in the classroom because you can get some academic money. All right, we have, multiple athletes in here that are getting huge academic scholarships along with their baseball scholarships, which then makes the school much more affordable for a family. And then two, just understand that you're still going to pay for school if you're a baseball player. You just are,
I think listen, we can probably beat the dead horse with all these rounds. Do you really think a coach is going to put all of their eggs in one basket in a sport where a singular player doesn't make that big of a difference? Again, basketball, you have one recruit can change your program. Baseball, even if you're the best pitcher in the world, you can only have one impact a week. So that, and then correct me if I'm wrong on this front, do you think a coach, or do you want to be in a position where one person has complete control over your ability to go to that school? Like if something goes wrong and the scholarship gets pulled, and that can happen, correct, at any point in time, right? Yeah. So do you want to give a coach complete control? You control 100% of my scholarship, and if I do something wrong, or I say something wrong, then I'm going to say, oh, you're gone, or somebody better comes along and I'm going to give to that kid instead of you. Do you really want to give that much control to one person? No, so both those things that makes this completely a myth, and a lot of times, people just flat out lie. Kids flat out lie, this is the scholarship I'm getting, it's a complete lie. So, I think this myth is an easy one to no doubt. So.
I'm good. I feel better now.
We did that was we got a lot of fun tests there. We feel better about it. So if you did like what you listened here on the podcast, please go visit kpimh.com. Put the blog tab at the top, and then please go visit Baseball Recruiting, the top 10 myths written by Erik Wogley. So please go make sure to check that out. Please follow us on all of our social medias at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and then please go subscribe to the YouTube channel at Kinetic Performance Institute. Thank you guys very much for listening.